killing of Sophie Toscan du Plantier. Sophie Toscan du Plantier was a French television producer who was killed outside her holiday home near Toormore, Goleen, County Cork, Ireland, on the night of 23 December 1996. A mother of one, Toscan du Plantier was 39 years old. British journalist Ian Bailey was arrested twice by the Garda Síochána, yet no charges were laid as the Director of Public Prosecutions (DPP) found there was insufficient evidence to proceed to trial. Bailey lost a libel case against 6 newspapers in 2003. He also lost a wrongful arrest case against the Gardaí, Minister for Justice, and Attorney General in 2015. In 2019, Bailey was convicted of murder by the Cour d'assises de Paris and sentenced to 25 years in prison. He was tried in absentia in France after winning a legal battle against extradition. In 2020, Ireland's High Court ruled that Bailey could not be extradited. Life. Toscan du Plantier, née Bouniel, lived in Paris with her film producer husband, Daniel Toscan du Plantier, and a son from her first marriage, Pierre-Louis Baudy Vignaud. She had visited Ireland several times as a teenager and bought the cottage at Toormore Irish for Great Omen in 1993 as a holiday retreat. She was a regular visitor with her son. Locals knew her by her maiden name. The cottage was in a remote part of rural West Cork. She arrived alone in Ireland on 20 December 1996, with plans to return to Paris for Christmas. Investigation. Toscan du Plantier was found by her neighbor at 10 am in a laneway beside her house, dressed in nightwear and boots. Her long john bottoms were caught on a barbed wire fence. Bloodstains were present on a gate, as well as a nearby piece of slate and a concrete block. Her body was left outdoors until the arrival of state pathologist John Harbison 28 hours later. He found laceration and swelling of the brain, fracture of the skull, and multiple blunt head injuries. The facial injuries were so severe that her neighbor could not formally identify her. The Gardaí have been criticized for mishandling evidence and were alleged to have coerced and intimidated witnesses. A Garda Síochána Ombudsman Commission report concluded that while there was a lack of administration and management in the investigation, there was no evidence of high-level corruption. Ian Bailey. Ian Kenneth Bailey was born in Manchester. He worked variously as a freelance journalist, sometimes published under the name Ian Bailey, and a fish farm worker, and held a market stall selling pizzas and poems. He moved to Ireland in 1991 and lived with his partner, Jules Thomas, in Goleen from 1992 onwards. Bailey was known to local Gardaí from previous incidents of domestic violence towards Thomas, which had resulted in her hospitalization. In 2001, he was convicted of assault in Skibbereen District Court. A psychiatrist's report prepared for the murder trial concluded he had a personality constructed on narcissism, psychorigidity, violence, impulsiveness, egocentricity, with an intolerance to frustration, and a great need for recognition. Under the liberating effects of alcohol, he had the tendency to become violent. After his failed libel case, the judge stated that Mr. Bailey is a man who likes a certain amount of notoriety, that he likes perhaps to be in the limelight, that he likes a bit of self-publicity. Bailey denies knowing the victim. Several witnesses have contradicted this. Bailey was informed of the murder at 1:40 by Irish Examiner reporter Eddie Cassidy. He denies telling Bailey the woman was French, as he did not know this information at that stage. Several witnesses reported being told by Bailey before noon that he was reporting on a murder of a French woman. Another 3 witnesses stated they were offered crime scene photographs at about 11 am. While under investigation, he continued to write news articles alleging the victim had multiple male companions and steering suspicion for the murder away from West Cork toward France. In the days following the murder, Bailey was noted to have multiple scratches to his forearms as well as an injury to his forehead. He attributed these to cutting down a Christmas tree on the morning of the 22nd. Investigators could not reproduce those injuries while cutting down trees. Witnesses who were with him on the evening of the 22nd, before the murder, could not recall any injuries. Bailey and his partner Jules Thomas gave conflicting accounts of his whereabouts on the night of the murder. In their initial statements to Gardaí, they both said Bailey had been in bed all night long. Thomas subsequently retracted that account and said Bailey had got out of bed about an hour after they had gone to bed at Tenpum, and returned at Ninian with a new injury to his forehead. Bailey changed his story to say that he got up at 4 a.m., wrote an article for about 30 minutes and returned to bed. A 14-year-old, Malachi Reed, said that 2 months after the killing Bailey told him that he smashed her brains in with a rock, though Bailey disputes this. In 1998, while drinking at home with another couple after a night out, Bailey began talking to Richie Shelley about the killing and said, I did it, I went too far," though again Bailey disputes this. Marie Farrell lived in Shull with her husband and children. On 11 January 1997, she rang the Gardaí from a payphone using an alias to state she saw a man on Keelfadda Bridge at 3 a.m. on the night of the murder. A public appeal was made on television for her to come forward to give a statement. She called the station from her house to say she would not come forward. The call was traced, and she was subsequently identified. She said she was driving with a man who was not her husband, and was unwilling to give evidence publicly. In 2015, under oath, she named the man as a since-deceased man from Longford. In the 2003 libel trial, she gave evidence on behalf of the newspapers that the man she saw on the bridge was Bailey. In 2004, she was threatened with legal action by Bailey to retract her statements. In 2005, she reported being intimidated by Bailey in her shop. In 2015, she gave evidence on behalf of Bailey in his wrongful arrest civil case. She contradicted her earlier testimony. A transcript of her testimony was referred to the DPP to examine whether she had committed perjury. Murder trial? Under French law, extraterritorial jurisdiction applies to the murder of a French citizen anywhere in the world. In 2007, the Association for the Truth on the Murder of Sophie Toscan du Plantier née Bouniol was founded by her family in order to advance the investigation. In February 2010, a European arrest warrant was issued by a French magistrate, which led to the High Court in Ireland granting an extradition order. This was appealed to the Supreme Court by Bailey. In March 2012, the appeal was granted by the Irish Supreme Court. All 5 judges upheld the appeal on the ground that the French authorities had no intention to try him at this stage. 4 of the judges also upheld the argument that the European arrest warrant prohibited surrendering Bailey to France because the alleged offence occurred outside French territory, and there was an absence of reciprocity. In March 2017, Bailey was arrested in Ireland on foot of a European arrest warrant issued by the French authorities. The warrant sought to extradite Bailey to France to stand trial for the voluntary homicide of Sophie Toscan du Plantier, and the High Court of Ireland endorsed the warrant. Bailey was successful in avoiding extradition, and in 2018, a French court ruled there was sufficient grounds for Bailey to face trial in absentia. Bailey was convicted of murder and sentenced to 25 years in prison on 31 May 2019. On 12 October 2020, the Judge Paul Burns in Ireland's High Court ruled that Bailey could not be extradited. Later that same month, during a French state visit to Dublin in August 2021, President Macron suggested that a new trial for Bailey could be arranged should he wish to travel to France. Banned in phone recordings. In 2014, when it came to light that phone calls at Garda stations had been secretly recorded, there were claims that some recordings from Bandon Garda station had evidence of irregularities in the Toscan du Plantier investigation. The 297 recorded calls regarding the investigation, which had survived a flood, were investigated by the Fennelly Commission. The Commission concluded that while there was evidence Gardaí were prepared to contemplate altering or suppressing evidence that Bailey had not committed the murder, there was no evidence Gardaí had actually done so. It did find that Garda improperly disclosed confidential information about the investigation to journalists and other civilians. True crime accounts. Various true crime accounts have been produced. The murder was the subject of a 2018 true crime podcast miniseries titled West Cork, produced by Audible and hosted by documentarian Jennifer Ford and investigative journalist Sam Bungie. An hour-long television documentary, The Du Plantier Case, produced by RT and presented by Philip Boucher Hayes, was aired in July 2017. A television series, Murder at the Cottage, produced by Jim Sheridan, started airing in June 2021. It is a 5-part series by Sky Crime. A documentary series, Sophie, A Murder in West Cork, was made available for streaming on Netflix on 30 June 2021. A book, Murder at Roaring Waiter, by Nick Foster, was published in May 2021. A podcast, Unsolved Murders, True Crime Stories, produced by Parcast Network, episodes 137 and 138, titled Film Fatale. A podcast, Mens Rea, a true crime podcast, episode 3, titled The Murder of Sophie Toscan du Plantier and Trial by Press.